All right, so today we're diving deep into IT service.
Sounds good.
We've got a ton of material to cover.
Yeah.
I think mostly ITIL stuff, both V3 and V4
Yeah.
principles, processes, all that jazz.
Yeah.
And even a bit about, some of the pitfalls and risks of IT service management.
Okay, cool.
So our mission today is really to kind of figure out what exactly an IT service is,
Yeah.
why it's important to manage it well, and what are some of the key principles and processes involved.
Makes sense?
But we got to do it without,
Yeah.
getting bogged down with all the technical jargon.
Of course. Yeah. Keeping it accessible.
Right, exactly.
Yeah, no, I think that's key.
So, just to kind of set the stage here,
Sure.
one of the key things to think about with IT service is that it's not a product, right? It's an intangible thing.
Right.
It's about providing value and an experience to the customer.
Yeah. Absolutely.
Yeah.
Yeah. It's about the outcome and the benefit that the user receives rather than the physical or even the digital infrastructure itself.
Right, exactly. So it's like, you could think of it as like owning an email server versus using a SaaS email platform.
That's a perfect analogy. Yeah.
Right. So if you own the server, you're responsible for everything. The hardware, the software, the security, the maintenance.
The whole 9 yards.
The whole 9 yards. But if you use a SaaS platform, somebody else is taking care of all that.
Right. Exactly.
Okay.
And you're just focused on using the service and getting the value from it.
Exactly. And this concept applies to a lot of different things within IT.
Mm-hmm.
It's not just about external cloud services or whatever. It's also about internal IT.
Yeah, absolutely.
The stuff that your company's IT department provides to its employees.
Internal services are just as critical.
Right. So you've got your help desk, you've got network management,
Right.
Custom internal systems, all that good stuff.
All part of the IT service landscape.
Yeah, and that's where IT service management, or ITSM, comes in.
Okay, yeah, ITSM, the framework.
Right. It's the structured approach to making sure that all these IT services are delivered effectively and consistently, and that they're aligned with the business objectives.
Absolutely, because without a framework like ITSM, it can easily become chaotic and inefficient.
Oh, yeah, for sure.
Trying to manage all these moving parts without a clear structure is a recipe for disaster.
Right. So let's jump into some of the core principles of ITIL.
Okay, that's good.
Since that's kind of, a big part of ITSM.
Yeah, it's really the foundation of good service management.
Right. And we'll start with ITIL v4.
Okay.
And the first principle here is focus on value.
Right. Focus on value.
Which seems pretty obvious, right?
It does, yeah, on the surface.
But it's really about ensuring that every single IT activity is actually delivering real benefits.
Tangible benefits.
For customers and stakeholders.
And the people who matter, yeah.
Right, so what are some of the challenges, in actually doing that, in putting that into practice?
Well, the interesting thing about value is that it can be quite subjective.
Right.
What's valuable to one person might not be valuable to another.
Totally, yeah.
And so defining value really requires constant engagement with stakeholders, setting up feedback loops, being really clear about what the expected outcomes are.
Yeah.
What are we actually trying to achieve here?
Yeah, and I guess that kind of ties into the next principle, which is start where you are.
Right, start where you are.
So instead of, always looking for some brand new shiny tool or solution.
Latest and greatest, yeah.
It's about understanding and utilizing what you already have effectively.
Exactly, yeah. Leverage your existing resources.
Right. So how do you avoid, falling into the trap of just sticking with outdated tools?
That's a great question. And it all comes down to conducting a thorough assessment of your current state, really understanding what's working, what's not working, and what resources you actually have available.
Mm-hmm.
Sometimes we underestimate the capabilities of what we already have.
Yeah.
For example, you might have a service desk that could significantly improve its response times.
Okay.
Simply by better utilizing its existing knowledge base.
Interesting.
Instead of jumping to a brand new expensive system.
Right. So it's all about, taking stock of what you have and making sure you're using it to its full potential.
Absolutely, yeah. Optimization before innovation.
Okay, cool. So the next principle is progress iteratively with feedback.
Okay, progress iteratively with feedback.
So small steps, continuous improvement based on what you learn.
Right, yeah, the agile approach.
Right, so what's the trick to getting useful feedback?
Well, the key is to break things down into manageable chunks.
Okay.
and to seek feedback frequently.
All right.
Don't wait until the end of a huge project to start gathering feedback.
Right. You want to be getting it all along the way.
Exactly. Yeah, and it's also about managing expectations. Big changes rarely happen overnight.
Mm-hmm.
So, a good approach is to do a phased rollout of a new system and build in regular user feedback loops throughout the process.
Right. So you're constantly iterating based on what you're hearing from people.
Precisely. Yeah, it's a continuous cycle of improvement.
Okay, cool. So we also have collaborate and promote visibility.
Right. Collaborate and promote visibility.
Which is, all about getting everyone involved.
Teamwork, yeah.
Sharing information, breaking down silos.
Transparency.
So how do you actually do that? How do you break down those silos that we often see in organizations?
Well, it really comes down to creating open communication channels.
Okay.
And fostering a shared understanding of goals and progress.
Mm-hmm.
So this can involve regular team meetings,
okay,
clear reporting structures,
right,
and using visual tools like a Kanban board
okay,
that make it easy to see progress and potential roadblocks.
Right, so everybody's on the same page.
Exactly, yeah. Everyone knows what's going on and how their work fits into the bigger picture.
All right, cool. Think and work holistically.
Think and work holistically.
This one is all about seeing the bigger picture.
Right, the systems thinking approach.
Understanding how different IT services connect and interact with each other.
Exactly, because IT is a complex ecosystem.
Yeah.
And changes in one area can have unexpected ripple effects in other areas.
Right. So why is that so important, in practice?
Well, it's important because it forces you to think beyond just your immediate task or your specific team.
Okay.
You need to consider the impact of your actions on the whole system.
Mm-hmm.
So, for instance, if you're planning a major database upgrade,
okay,
you need to understand how that might impact various applications, user services, security performance, all of those things.
Wow. Okay, so it's really about taking a step back.
Yeah, zooming out.
And looking at the bigger picture.
Exactly, and involving all the relevant stakeholders in the decision-making process.
All right, cool. Then we have keep it simple and practical.
Keep it simple and practical.
Less complexity is better.
The KISS principle.
Yeah, right?
Right.
So what are some of the common pitfalls that lead to overly complex IT solutions?
Well, often it's a fear of missing something. Like this idea that we need to account for every possible scenario.
Right.
Or a tendency to over-engineer solutions.
Interesting.
We end up building these really elaborate systems
that
are difficult to maintain and even more difficult to understand.
Right. And they're probably more expensive, too.
Yeah, absolutely. Complexity comes with a cost.
Right. So the key here is to really focus on the core needs.
Yeah, what are we truly trying to achieve?
And eliminate any unnecessary steps or features.
Right. Simplify wherever possible.
So give me an example. Like, how would you actually put this into practice?
Sure. Let's say you have a really lengthy approval process for something simple, like requesting new software. It has to go through multiple layers of management and takes weeks to get approved.
Yeah.
That's a prime candidate for simplification.
Right.
Maybe you can streamline the process, reduce the number of approvers,
okay,
and make it much faster and easier for people to get what they need.
Okay, cool. And then finally we have optimize and automate.
Optimize and automate.
So this is about improving processes and then using automation where it makes sense.
Right. Yeah, working smarter, not harder.
Right. So what's the danger of automating too early?
Well, the danger is that you end up automating a flawed process.
Right.
Which just means that you're now making those mistakes faster and at scale.
Oh, wow. Yeah. So it's kind of like, if you automate a process that's broken,
exactly,
you're just amplifying the brokenness.
You're just speeding up the train wreck.
Right. So it's essential to streamline and optimize the process first.
Absolutely. Yeah. Get it right manually before you try to automate it.
And then you can bring in the automation.
Exactly. Then automation can really shine.
Okay, cool. So those are the 7 guiding principles of ITIL v4.
Yeah, those are the core principles that guide effective IT service management.
Right. And they really provide a good framework for thinking about how to deliver value.
They do, yeah. They're a great foundation.
Through IT services.
Absolutely.
Okay, so now let's briefly touch on the ITIL service life cycle.
Okay, the life cycle.
Which consists of 5 stages.
5 stages, yes.
Strategy, design, transition, operation, and continual service improvement.
Right, a comprehensive framework.
So what's the core focus of each of those stages?
Okay, so service strategy is all about Aligning IT with business goals.
Okay, so that's kind of like the high-level planning phase.
Exactly, yeah, setting the direction.
Right. Then you have service design, which is about creating the service blueprint.
Right, designing the service from the ground up.
Okay, so you're figuring out, what the service is going to look like, how it's going to work,
Yeah, all the details.
all that stuff.
The nuts and bolts.
Right. Then you have service transition, which is about implementing the service.
Right, taking it from design to reality.
So this is where you're actually building and deploying the service.
Yeah, making it live.
Then you have service operation, which is about delivering and managing the service on a day-to-day basis.
Right, keeping the lights on.
Right. So this is where you're dealing with, incidents, problems, changes, requests.
The daily grind.
All that stuff.
Keeping things running smoothly.
And then finally, you have continual service improvement.
Continual service improvement, the never-ending journey.
Right. So this is the ongoing effort to make things better.
Exactly, yeah. Always striving for improvement.
So it's about identifying areas for improvement.
Right.
Implementing changes and then measuring the results.
Then repeating the cycle.
And then going back and doing it again.
Continuous improvement.
Right. So it's a never-ending cycle.
Yeah, it is. Yeah, it's a mindset
of improvement.
Absolutely.
Okay, cool. So and within this life cycle, there are a number of key processes.
Oh yeah, tons of processes.
Can you give us a quick rundown of some of the important ones?
Sure. Yeah. So some of the key processes include service catalog management.
Okay.
Which is about providing a clear list of available IT services to users.
Okay. So it's kind of like a menu of services.
Yeah, exactly, like a shopping list of what IT can offer.
Right. Then you have service level management.
Service level management.
Which is about defining performance expectations through SLAs.
Right, service level agreements.
So you're basically setting expectations with the customer.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Setting clear targets for things like response times.
Okay.
Resolution times, availability.
Right. So it's kind of like a pizza delivery company guaranteeing that your pizza will arrive within 30 minutes.
That's a great analogy, yeah.
Or you get your money back.
Right, exactly.
Yeah.
Setting those expectations up front.
Right. Then we have incident management.
Incident management.
Which is about restoring normal service operation as quickly as possible.
Right, yeah, firefighting.
So give me an example of an incident.
Sure. Let's say there's a major email outage.
Okay.
That would be an incident.
Okay.
And the incident management team would be responsible for getting email back up and running.
Right, as quickly as possible.
As quickly and efficiently as possible.
Minimizing the impact to the business.
Absolutely.
Okay. Then we have problem management.
Problem management.
Which is about identifying and resolving the root cause of incidents.
Right. Yeah, getting to the bottom of things.
So how is that different from incident management?
Well, incident management is about fixing the immediate problem.
Okay.
Whereas problem management is about figuring out why the problem happened in the first place.
Okay, so it's more about prevention.
Exactly. Yeah, preventing the same issue from happening again.
Right. So give me an example of a problem.
Sure. Let's say you're experiencing recurring network outages.
Okay.
The incident management team would fix each outage as it occurs.
Right.
But the problem management team would investigate and determine that the root cause is actually some outdated network equipment that needs to be replaced.
Right. And so by replacing the equipment, you prevent the outages from happening again.
Exactly. Yeah, you address the underlying issue.
Okay, cool. And then finally, we have service request fulfillment.
Service request fulfillment.
Which is about handling common user requests efficiently.
Right, the everyday stuff.
So give me an example of a service request.
Sure. A new employee needing access to certain systems and applications.
Okay.
That would be a service request.
All right. And so the service request fulfillment team would take care of that.
Yeah, they'd process the request,
okay,
grant the necessary access.
Right, and make sure the new employee has everything they need.
Exactly.
Okay, cool. And all of this, all of these processes, all of these principles.
It all ties together.
They all tie back to continual service improvement.
They do, yeah. It's the glue that holds it all together.
Right, because the goal is to constantly be improving the quality and efficiency of your IT services.
Absolutely, yeah. Always striving to do better.
And to make sure that they're meeting the needs of the business.
And adapting to changing needs.
Right, exactly. So continual service improvement is really the engine that keeps everything running smoothly.
It is, yeah. It's the heartbeat of ITSM.
Okay, so I think we've covered a lot of ground here.
We have, yeah. It's been a comprehensive deep dive.
But the big takeaway, I think, is that effective IT is about more than just the technology.
Absolutely. Yeah, it's about people and processes.
It's about delivering value and a positive experience to the user.
It's about enabling business outcomes.
Right, exactly. And ITSM provides the framework,
The structure,
ITIL principles offer the guidance,
the best practices.
and continual service improvement keeps everything on track.
Yeah, the continuous improvement loop.
So it's really about, taking a holistic approach to IT service management.
Absolutely. Yeah, it's all connected.
And making sure that everything is aligned with the needs of the business.
And ultimately delivering value.
Right, exactly.
That's the key.
So here's a final thought for you.
Okay.
We've been talking about all this in the context of IT.
Right, IT service management.
But I think a lot of these principles and ideas can actually be applied to other areas of your work.
I agree.
Or even your personal life.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
It's about applying those principles of focus value.
Right.
Starting where you are continuous improvement.
Right. So what are some of the services that you rely on in your daily life?
That's a good question.
And how could you use these concepts to make them better?
Okay. Yeah. I like that. Yeah. I'm going to have to think about that.
Right. It's just something to kind of ponder,
Yeah, definitely food for thought.
All right. Well, that's all the time we have for today.
All right. Well,
thanks for joining us on this deep dive
it's been a pleasure.
into IT service.
Yeah. Thanks for having me.
All right. We'll see you next time.
See you later.